But by way of announcement, a lot of people ask and wonder when you say indulgence prayers, it says in there often for the intentions of the Pope. And people wonder and say, well, to gain a plenary indulgence or any indulgence, we have to pray for the intentions of the Pope. And none of us want to pray for the intentions of these modernist popes, which is ecumenism, religious liberty, and the destruction of Christ the King. So what does the intentions of the Pope really mean? It's a set of 6 intentions that are handed down from tradition. So this is what is meant by when you pray for the intentions of the Pope, this is what is meant. These are 6 intentions already fixed way back from Catholic tradition. First, you pray for the exaltation of the Holy Catholic Church. Second, you pray for the propagation of the Catholic faith, that it be spread through all nations, for all races, all people, as Christ came for all to be redeemed by his blood, although most don't care. Third, the extirpation of heresy, to root out heresy from the nations. Fourth, for the conversion of sinners. Fifth, for concord between Christian princes, so harmony between Catholic leaders. And sixth, the welfare of the Christian people. And that is what is meant by the intentions of the Pope when you pray for plenary indulgence or partial indulgences. In the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost, Amen. So we must never forget that we belong to the army of the Church militant. We are Catholics who profess the very faith that was handed down by the Blessed Trinity, and the divine Son who became man gave this Catholic faith to us. And his Sacred Heart burned for the love of souls. He wants all to be saved and come to the knowledge of the truth. But God doesn't force any of us. None of us have handcuffs. You're free to walk away from God. Just like at 18 or 20 or 25, many kids think they're free to walk away from home. And many do. Some for good, some for bad. But we are free to go. And God doesn't want us, He doesn't want any of us lost. And He's done, as St. Augustine says, everything He could to save us. Especially to die for us. He couldn't do more for us than He already has done. And so this Holy Catholic faith, which we profess, and today very few profess the faith anymore. The faith that comes down from Catholic tradition. Many Catholics think they profess the faith, but it's a new faith of Vatican II. It's a new faith of religious liberty. It's a new faith that says all religions lead to God. That's heresy. The new faith that says the Pope shares his authority with the other bishops. That's heresy. That's called collegiality. There's a new faith that says all religions should pray together and everyone should work together for a one world religion so that there'll be no more wars. This is the new modern speak. And everyone, even perverts and sodomites and abortionists, can all have a part in this happy kingdom. And that's not Christ's teaching at all. And the doctrine promoted by Pope Francis is already condemned by all his previous popes before Vatican II and by Christ himself. And so we profess the Catholic faith even if we're reduced to a handful. And Our Lady did say it would come to that. And Christ himself even said, when the Son of Man comes again, will he find faith on the earth? Because most men would have gone the wide road to hell, which is party up religion, party up politics, party up life, and to shrug off the kingship of Christ has a huge price. And it will bring the concentration camps, it will bring the gulag, it will bring the slavery of the police state, which is quickly upon us, certainly in the United States. So let us draw our minds to some of the great examples before us. of some of the great martyrs. And we must often think of the martyrs and pray to them, because you had martyrs from every age, old and feeble men, bishops who were in their 80s and 90s. One bishop was 120 years old, and he was dragged behind a horse and flogged, scourged. And then there were little kids, some of them even almost hardly 3 or 4, professing the Catholic faith and being tortured and put to death. Girls who were tender, boys who were big and strong and ready to take on the whole Roman Empire. They stood before the Colosseum when all the thumbs were going down against them, and with the strength that only can come from God, can only come from God. Listen to the list of some of these tortures. Some of these saints were boiled in boiling oil, liquid pitch, red-hot coals poured down their mouth or over their bodies, hooks to pull out their eyes and teeth, iron combs to tear off the flesh as they were stretched on the rack. Now you might say this sounds extreme. This was everyday life in the first 300 years of the Catholic history. We forget it, but we must not, because we're going back to these days. Fires quickly to consume or to torture, scourging until their bones and their intestines became visible, beheadings, quartering, that is cutting off their arms and legs. This happened in England. Lacerating, being stabbed, impaled or crushed, like St. Stephen, by rocks. And these are only some of the ingredients of the martyr's chalice. St. Alphonsus, who wrote a great book on the victories of the martyrs, and I'm going to draw from some of these, he speaks about a poor worker in the village of Antioch. His name was St. Barlaam, and he would be your average, Joe mechanic today. But he was a virtuous man. He had a good family. They prayed the rosary every night. He tried to teach them the faith. They kept out of their home unsupervised television or computer. Of course, this is the 300s, so he would have. But what did he do? He professed the Catholic faith. He was arrested under the persecution of Diocletian. And with extraordinary fortitude, he went through various sufferings, and he was scourged until the executioners, these big, strong Roman soldiers, were totally exhausted. So he was just beaten. He was totally exhausted. So they forced to put his hand over the incense stand before the god of whoever, Jupiter or Apollo. And they forced his hand over it. And then they dropped red-hot coals in his hands and a little bit of incense, so that the crowd seeing this, especially the Catholic people, the coals being so hot, he would drop it, and they would say, "See, he burned incense to the gods." But what did St. Barlaam do? He held out his hand, they put the red-hot coals, and it took all the strength that a normal man doesn't have. It had to come from grace of God. And these men prayed all through their martyrdom, just like all through their life. They always prayed to God and adored Him and thanked Him for everything. That's why we say grace before and after meals. We're so spoiled, we have food, but some people hardly have any. And when you don't have much, you're grateful. So he was a man of prayer already from his youth. So those red-hot coals just burnt right into his skin. And he held, and the coals fell through his hand until it burnt completely through his hand. He never turned his hand. And then the description of his death says, at the same time burning coals were placed in his hand in the hope that he might be obliged by the pain to let them fall. But the constancy of the saint was greater than their malice. He allowed his flesh to be burned to the bone, and he died in this effort. Saint Barnum, remember his name, pray to him. Another girl, 12 years old, Saint Eulalia. Saint Eulalia, 12-year-old girl. She was ordered by the tyrants to be cruelly whipped, and then boiling oil poured into the wounds, and burning tortures to be applied to her breasts and her sides. During these tortures she ceased not to praise God. Her joints were entirely dislocated. You've ever seen hockey games where the players, we used to see this often, players checked in a good clean check, fell to the ice rolling in pain because one guy's shoulder was dislocated. So this 12-year-old girl, all her bones dislocated, the flesh torn from her bones with iron hooks, and she was finally burned alive, having baffled the ingenuity of her inhuman executioners. This is our Catholic faith. This is what we profess to this world that now has made itself Sodom and Gomorrah, the West. The West now has the anger and the fire and brimstone hanging over it. The Western world is officially over. It's finished. Once you become Sodom and Gomorrah, that's your death sentence. So you must be the lights and the warriors and the professors, the confessors of the faith. That's why we have in the Mass often confessors. They're not martyrs, they're worn white like St. Camillus de Laetus. He's called a confessor of the faith because they profess the faith not by blood but by their virtuous life and examples. And so another great saint, Saint Vitalis, 14-year-old boy, was scourged, stretched out on the rack, and torn with iron hooks. His father, who was a pagan, a Gentile of Rome, he wept with anguish, seeing his son die this way. And then he told his dad, "No, Father, I do not die. I go to live with Christ forever. I go to live with Christ forever." They conquered, these boys. Saint Agapitus, also a teenager, he evinced the same fortitude. The tyrant threatened that he would place upon his head a red-hot helmet. Now imagine a bronze helmet having sat on red-hot coals put on your head. And what did he do? "Oh, okay, I'll burn incense. Oh, I don't want to lose my head. I gotta live a normal life. I gotta get married and have a job, and I gotta make it in this world. I don't want to die yet." Is that what St. Agapitus said? We all profess the Catholic faith, and we all know that we must be ready to die for the faith, for the love of Christ crucified. All of us must be ready at all time. And not only that, Christ tells us you got to be ready to die for each other. So that if someone is in the danger of getting hit by a car or a train or drowning, you must be ready to sacrifice your life for your friends. And Christ did it for his enemies. And we must also have that love, that charity to die for our neighbor. And that means always ready. That means we always have to have this disposition in us of love of God and neighbor. Always. It can happen any time. And even many pagans put us to shame. Some guy drowning not too long ago in a swift, cold, freezing river. He somehow fell in, and someone ran out and got him. Swam out and got him. So what did St. Agapitus say? This is what he told the executioners who threatened him with a helmet, a red-hot braised helmet on his head. He says, "What better fortune could await me than to exchange your helmet of torture for a heavenly crown?" And so what did the emperor do? He ordered him red-hot coals should be placed on his head, Then he was scourged, and then suspended by the feet over a thick smoke. He afterwards had boiling water poured over his chest, and finally was beheaded. Saint Agapitus. So, dear faithful, today you might say, well, these are saints in the early church. This has nothing to do with us. But if you look at the last 100 years, there's never been more martyrs. Out of the 10 great persecutions of Rome, there were about 11 million martyrs. That's 30,000 Catholics being killed every day for 1 year. That's how many martyrs. And yet, the martyrs of the last century surpassed that. The martyrs in Ukraine starved under communist Russia. The martyrs in Russia under Joseph Stalin killed for the Catholic faith. And in Poland, how many? And in Hungary, how many? And in China, we don't even know how many millions have been massacred by the communist governments. And in our own West, everyone's against communism in the West, and the West is free, and the West proclaims liberty and independence. But this liberty and independence is from the Masonic lodges. It's the darkness. It's not the liberty of Christ from sin, but the liberty to sin all I want. And that's to mock God. And so abortion, the West has so many millions of abortions, you can't even count. And the martyrs of our time exceed the 10 first persecutions. The martyrs of the French Revolution, of the Masonic Revolution, of the Communist Revolution. And so we have to profess the same faith of all Christ, of all the apostles, of all the martyrs. And that means we can never water it down, we can never compromise it. And that's why you have to be alert. That's why you have to be ready for battle in this time, especially all ages. Because what we're facing now is a new compromise of the Catholic faith from the leaders of the Society of St. Pius X, as well as the leaders of the Church. At all levels there's compromise and betrayal. And even if everyone compromises, what will you do when it comes down? What will I do when it comes down to life or death? And so, for example, for the Superior General to sign that religious liberty is reconcilable with the Church's magisterium, are you allowed to sign on to that? You're not allowed. Religious liberty, as defined and condemned by the popes, which says the state can be neutral on matters of religion, which says any man can profess whatever religion he wants and he can be saved. Listen to the popes on this one. This is what the popes call religious liberty, the good popes, Pius IX, Leo XIII, St. Pius X. This so-called right of religious liberty deserves to be called most pernicious to the Catholic doctrine and the salvation of souls. It is absurd, erroneous, insanity, contrary to the doctrine of Holy Scriptures and of the Catholic Church and of the ancient Holy Fathers. Religious liberty, this heresy, is reproved, proscribed, condemned, and to be considered by all the children of the Catholic Church as such. And then listen to these words of Pius IX in 1846. Qui pluribus. Also, he says, perverse is the shocking theory that it makes no difference to what religion anyone belongs. This is the modern world. Don't you hear this all the time? Doesn't matter what you believe, just be nice. A theory, says Pius IX, and he's speaking infallibly here, a theory which is greatly at variance even with natural reason. By means of this theory, those crafty men remove all distinction between virtue and vice, between truth and error, honorable and vile action. They pretend that men can gain eternal salvation by the practice of any religion whatsoever, as if there could be any sharing between justice and iniquity, any collaboration between light and darkness, or any agreement between Christ and Belial. And that's why, dear faithful, you must stand firm. We must not go along with compromise. And it is very sad to say, but I wish it wasn't true, but we must resist the novice order religion. We must also resist the compromise of the leaders of the Society of St. Pius X. We must oppose it, because this wish-wash, this double-speak language which Bishop Fillet now uses, and now he's praised using the offertory in the new Mass. That shouldn't even be a question for us. The new Mass, which is pure poison, and it is intrinsically evil. And no one should go to the new Mass. And then attending Masses of priests who belong to a congregation who have compromised on the faith. What did Archbishop Lefebvre say about that? Isn't that being extreme to say you can't go to the Latin Mass? That's valid. It's the Tridentine Mass. But if the priests have compromised or belong to an institution that stands for compromise, what did Archbishop Lefebvre say? You cannot go. And he said that about St. Peter's Society way back in 88 and 89. He said they are traitors, and even though the Mass is valid, even if the priest is nice, you cannot participate in these Masses, he said, because it'll endanger your faith. Not the Mass itself, but the sermons, the coffee and donut talk after Mass, the bookstore, what is sold and what's not sold. In the 80s, in the late 80s and 90s, the St. Peter, Society of St. Peter bookstores, they were forbidden to sell any books condemning the new Mass. And of course, Archbishop Lefebvre. And it's the duty of the priest to warn the faithful, we got to do this to get to heaven and avoid this so we don't go to hell. And so it stands the same for our situation now. And it's nothing new. And I want to close with one last example of one great martyr of the Old Testament. His name was Eliseus. No, his name was Eleazar, Eleazar. He's in the book of Maccabees. And he's an old man. And the judge has pity on him and says, look, we know you're not allowed to eat meat. The Jews were forbidden to eat pork. And he said to the old man, Eleazar, look, just eat. We're going to feed you chicken, all right? But everyone else will think that you're eating pork. But you can tell God, you know, I kept your law. I'm not going to eat meat. I'm not going to eat pork. So you didn't break God's law. And it won't be a sin. And we'll let you go and we'll have mercy on you. So for most modern people, that would sound like a good deal. Hey, I didn't eat meat. I can say I didn't eat meat. I didn't eat the pork. I'm scot-free. But what did Eleazar do? He said, wait a minute. If I eat this chicken, which I can, but all those young people out there think I eat the pork. And I scandalize them. And I deceive them. He said, I cannot do this thing before God. This is what's called simulation. You're not allowed to pretend to do something with the faith. You're not allowed to sign, for example, a doctrinal declaration to get canonical recognition. You're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to compromise the faith to get recognition from Rome for being Catholic. You're not allowed to do that. So Eleazar set us the good example. What did he do? I refuse to eat, even the chicken, because it will deceive all that see me. And they said, old man, think about your retirement. Think about your old age. Have pity on your family and your wife and your grandchildren. He says, I prefer death than compromise. Even appearance of compromise. Notice this, even appearance of compromise. we're not allowed to do before God. And he was martyred, this old man. And his blood was his trophy to heaven. So let's pray to these great martyrs to have the spirit of the martyrs in this age. We need to have the spirit and pray for the spirit of the martyrs, because that's very likely where we're heading anyway. So be always ready. And confessors also were ready to die for the faith. Confessors were always ready to die for the faith. Archbishop Lefebvre, as Bishop Faure revealed, there are several times they tried to kill him. And he was always ready to die for the faith. At one meal they had a bomb in the bathroom. Bishop Faure was there as a priest, and Archbishop Lefebvre. This was I think in Mexico. And a bomb was in the bathroom. And fortunately someone went in and found the bomb and reported it. And they were able to deactivate it. But there are several times, at least 4 times, they attempted to take Archbishop Lefebvre's life. And he would have been ready to die a martyr. And he did die a moral martyr by being so-called excommunication, suspended, kicked out, marginalized, ridiculed, and every list. And that's what's happening with those resistance Catholics who want to keep the faith today. So persevere, they're faithful, and let's go now to the King of Martyrs. The King of Martyrs who gives you his precious blood and his sacred heart to strengthen you. Isn't this beautiful, this Catholic faith we profess? That we just don't believe a bunch of books. We don't believe in some rock like the Muslims. But we believe in the living God who comes down like living fire from heaven on this altar to himself be your friend, be your God, be your king, be your captain, be your strength, and inflame your heart with the love of God and the desire for the heavenly city for which we are made, and which joy I wish you all through the Immaculate Heart of Mary. O Mary, conceived without sin,
pray for us who have recourse to thee.
O Mary, conceived without sin,
Pray for us who have recourse to thee.
O Mary, conceived without sin,
Pray for us who have recourse to
in the
thee.
Father, Son, and Holy Ghost.